The Detroit Pistons score 148 points in this game against the Utah Jazz, but it's still not enough to get the win as they continue on a new losing streak after losing this game. After, again, scoring 148 points, that was not enough. That's how bad this defense was. We're going to talk about what we saw in this game in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. We'll be talking about how the roster issues with this team was on full display in this game. I'm going to tell you guys how to start the podcast off. Then we'll talk about selling high on some players and really not even just selling high, a decision that needs to be made at some point. A decision has to be made by this team quickly, and they can't continue to wait. And then also we'll talk about, is there another long losing streak for the Detroit Pistons on the way? But first, these roster issues within this game. The Pistons score 148 points in this game. But I didn't watch this game thinking to myself, oh, the Pistons offense is so great. I didn't watch this game thinking to myself, oh, they found something offensively. What I came away from watching this entire game, all I was thinking the whole game was, man, this roster really is just terribly assembled. Like this roster truly makes zero sense. And it really puts anybody, the coaching staff, the players, puts everyone in a tough position. Now, I don't think the coaching staff has done a good job at all. I've said this many, many times. I think change it. If you wanted to move on from the coaching staff at this point, 100% makes sense to me. Like, I'm not defending the coaching staff at all. But watching this game, we heard all offseason. Let's go here. We heard all offseason about how they wanted to be a defensive team. We heard all offseason about how they were prioritizing defense. And at the beginning of the year, we saw them start Cade Cunningham, Killian Hayes, Asar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, and Jalen Duren. It was in an effort to play defense and to be a defensive team. Now, that starting lineup was high defensively. Like, it wasn't the worst in the league. I don't believe it was average either. I think it was right below average defensively, but it was really bad offensively. That's the problem the Pistons have. Because now, what it seems like to me, two things happened. One, either the front office was bullied into going away from that and going for the offensive side of the floor, or the coaching staff was bullied into going away from that idea and going to the offensive side of the floor, because now the Pistons are going full offense. And it's the same issue no matter which way you go. We kind of talked about this a little bit on the last podcast. When the Pistons were going full defense, this front office did not add any defenders to this roster outside of Asar Thompson, who is a rookie, who is now barely playing for the Detroit Pistons. We talked about that in the last episode. Asar is barely even playing on this team. We'll talk about this even more in the second segment. But yeah, he's barely even playing on this team. That was the only defender you added onto this team, but yet you're talking about prioritizing defense. So when you prioritize defensive lineups, let's just call them defensive lineups, what you're doing is you're putting a lineup out there that's still going to be bad defensively. It's going to be better than the other lineups you possibly have, but it'll still be bad defensively, except it'll be horrible offensively. So you have that happen. Then you have the option, which you've seen the Pistons now go to over the last few weeks, which is, okay, screw it. We'll go all offense and try to outscore people. Well, what you get here is you get an offense that is mediocre, average to below average, maybe. That's the offense you get, except then you have a historically awful defense. No matter which way you go, it's not helping anything. This is why what they did in the offseason was just so crazy. Because if you wanted to go full defense, at least add defenders to where when you go a full defensive lineup, you actually are fine defensively. Like, you actually have a chance to win games because you are good defensively. Yeah, you may not be good offensively, but you may be good defensively, force turnovers, force missed shots, be able to run in transition and get buckets in the fast break. Then you maybe actually would be able to survive. You wouldn't be a good offense, but at least then you'd be good at something. You'd be a good defense. Or instead of trying to just give lip service and PR to the Pistons fan base that everyone loves to hear the whole, oh, Detroit's a grit and grind city. This 04 Pistons bad boys, we're going, defense is all culture. Like, instead of giving us all that PR BS, go offense then. Go offense, because that's what you've done now. Go offense in the offseason. So then if you do go offense, you'll have a really good offense or a terrible defense. But at least in that case, you'll win more games because you actually will be a good offense at that point. Right now, when they try to go good offense, they're just an average offense. They're average to below average offense. And that's not enough to make up to being a historically awful defense. And then when you go defense, you're a historically bad offense, and you're not a good enough defensive team to make up for it. So there's nowhere to go. And you don't have the options to go to go balanced. They don't have good enough players that go two ways. They got players who can shoot that can't defend. They got players that can defend that can't shoot. They got defenders who can't shoot, can't dribble. They got shooters who can't defend, can't dribble. They can't rebound. Like, they don't have anybody that can do multiple things. So that's all I saw on display in this game against the Utah Jazz. Because a lot of people are frustrated by the Pistons' decision to not close with Jaden Ivey. I don't have a problem with them not closing with Jaden Ivey because Alec Burks literally had fire shooting out of his right hand the entire second half. And he's the only reason why this game went to overtime, literally. But the counter is, well, why didn't Ivey play for Isaiah Livers? I mean, the Jazz were playing Markkenen and Kessler together. If you sub out Livers for Ivey, you are really pushing it with Cade, Ivey, Burks, Bojan, and then Duren. Like, you're really pushing it. You're really pushing it at that point. Now, you weren't playing defense anyways, but you're really, like, I can't blame the coaching staff for not wanting to go that insanely small against the Utah Jazz team when they were already scoring a lot. Now, if they weren't scoring a lot, if their offense wasn't, like, if they didn't score 148 points, okay, yeah, your offense wasn't good enough. You weren't getting enough stops. Okay, put Ivey in, so then at least you can be offensive. Like, I get that. But they weren't struggling offensively. They were getting open shots against this awful Utah Jazz defense. Like, they were still scoring. So there was no reason, like, just going smaller just makes you worse defensively. It would have made them worse defensively and worse in the glass. I don't think this is the argument. This is the night to make the argument to play Ivey over Livers. Or Ivey over Burks. That's really what the conversation is. I don't think the conversation ever actually was, or a thought in Monty's mind, get Livers out for Ivey. I don't think that was a realistic option. I understand why. I'm not going to come on here and criticize that. I don't think that makes much sense, to be honest. But I understand why fans want to see Ivey in there. He's a young guy, main young guy. You need to see him closing game. Like, I get that. I get that whole thing. But again, the Pistons scored 148 points. They shot 53% from the field. They shot 46% from deep. I truly don't feel like that was a showing of, oh, look how great this offensive can be. Like, if you watch this game, the defense from both sides was some of the worst defense probably played in the entire NBA this season. Like, quite literally, I think this probably was the worst defensive game you've seen all year. Neither team was trying to play any defense. Neither team was closing out on anybody. Neither team was trying to close out and shoot. Like, it was terrible. It was straight up terrible. The three that Bojan hit to tie the game with like 20 seconds left, he gets this three off. The Pistons are down 3. And instead of hedging all screens to Utah Jazz, instead of hedging all screens and trying to take away all threes, Walker Kessler is in a drop beneath the three-point line. Now, in his defense, he did just play off of Isaiah Livers like 3 seconds earlier and still was able to recover and block the three-point shot. So maybe he thought he could do the same thing to Bojan. But either way, like, he's playing off of Bojan like in drop coverage in that situation. Like, and then you have the Pistons do the same thing on the defense. Like, this game was horrific defensively. I don't think this was a big thing for the offense to try to celebrate. This was just how bad Utah was. So that's why I didn't come away from this game thinking, oh, maybe the Pistons are figuring out things offensively. No, I come away thinking, man, this roster, if there was a game that I could show to show just how bad this roster is, how badly this roster was put together, this would be the game. Because they don't have an option to go defensively. Because if they go defensively, then they're awful offensively. It's literally... It's so horrifically bad. It's so bad. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And now the Pistons lose another game in which Bojan plays 43 minutes, Cade plays 40, and Jaden Ivey only plays 21. Asar only plays 11 minutes. And this is why the Detroit Pistons need to make a decision right now, this week. They need to make a decision immediately. We'll talk about what that decision is in just 1 second. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA and get on your way to being your best self. Too often, people think getting therapy is just about struggling with things. You go when you're struggling with some things, but that's not always the case. Around New Year's, we get obsessed with how to change ourselves instead of just expanding on what we're already doing right. Maybe you finally organized one part of your space and you want to tackle another one. Or maybe you're taking your supplements every morning, but now you want to actually eat breakfast too. Therapy helps you find your strengths so you can ditch the extreme resolutions that we all know when you go the extreme with the resolutions, you're not going to last. It helps you ditch those and make changes that actually will stick. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And the best thing about BetterHelp is that if you're not vibing with the therapist, you want to switch, you can switch just like that with no additional charge. So again, give BetterHelp a try at betterhelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. Celebrate the progress that you've already made. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Listen, everybody, the Detroit Pistons are 3-31. I'm going to say this one more time. The Pistons are 3-31. And at this point, I'm not joking. Doing nothing is possibly the worst decision ever made by any executive, by any person involved in decision making in sports history. This week they need to make a decision. And I don't care which way they go, but they have to make a decision right now. Because right now you're not getting anything. Right now you literally are not earning anything on both sides of the coin. And this is what I mean. In this topic on the side, if you're watching this on YouTube, I have this segment titled Sell High, and you'll see why I have it like that. Ausar Thompson played 11 minutes in this game. We talked about how little Ausar Thompson has been playing over the last few weeks in the last episode. Jane Ivey played 21 minutes in this game. And like I said in the first segment, for this game specifically, if you're just looking at this game, I understand why. Again, Alec Burks had literally fire shooting out of his right hand. So just looking at this game, I get it. But those two guys are supposed to be key elements, key cornerstones of your future. At least for your immediate future. And maybe you move one of them down the line, but they're still incredibly important because you need them to get to that point where they can be a main piece of a trade down the line to get a star. Whichever one. Either way, they're a cornerstone of your franchise, future cornerstone of your franchise. Either way. Them not playing a lot when your team is 3-31 is tragic. It's absolutely tragic. If you're not playing, for example, I always use this team as an example, but it is what it is. The Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets don't want to use Amen Thompson all that much. Okay. They don't want to play him 30-plus minutes. Okay. They want to send Cam Whitmore down to the G League. Let him get minutes down there. Okay. That's fine. You want to know why? Because the Houston Rockets are 17-15. They're actually winning games. They're about to make the playoffs. They have Sengun playing at a great level. They have other players playing at Jabari Smith playing at a high level because of the guys that they brought in. So those two guys are key parts of their future, cornerstones of their future. They have veterans surrounding them, and they're actually winning. So if you're going to let the young guys like Amen Thompson or Cam Whitmore develop in a different way while also maintain winning, then it would make sense. When you are 3-31, sitting your young guys to play the veterans, you're not winning games doing it. Like, it's not like you're sitting the young guys to play veterans so you can win games and make that next step to the play-in or playoffs or something. No, you're sitting the vets to still continue to lose and go on 28-game losing streaks, to still lose 31 games of the first 34 games of the season, to still be historically bad. So you're not accomplishing anything. You're not accomplishing winning, and then you're also not accomplishing getting your young guys minutes and developing them. So neither one is happening. Neither one's, again, if the Pistons were 15 and 17 or something, or 14 and 18, okay, I see it. You're trying to push for the play-in. It's helping you get closer to that next step. Guys are in at least a winning environment for the first time in the NBA. Like, I get it, okay? The young guys, there's different ways to develop them. Let them get minutes in the G League. They don't need to play a ton because right now you're getting what you need out of the next step of this development. You're not getting that. You're one of the worst teams ever in NBA history. You are probably the worst team in NBA history. And you're playing vets over your young guys. Your young guys are not playing, and you're still losing. It makes no sense. So the Pistons need to choose one. Either sell high on Alec Burks, who has found his shot again, and looks like a valuable veteran piece to a rotation for a contender. Sell high on him. Sell high on Bojan, who just had 36 points and has looked really good since coming back this season. Sell high on both of those guys and move them for assets, for picks, or more young players. You have to make a decision. Either do that, and this has to be done this week. Either you do that and you buy completely into a terrible season. That's the first scenario you can go. You move those guys right now and just straight up admit, because at some point, I don't know what needs to happen, but at some point, this ownership and this front office has to realize what is happening in front of them. This is a lost season. This season is over. It's done. Like, I don't know. It's 3-31. Why is this a talking point? This season's done. You need to admit it. You need to just face the facts. It's done. So there's two avenues you can go here. Either you accept the fact that this season is completely washed. You are terrible. You're historically bad. You're going to be competing. You want the first overall pick. There's nothing you can do about it at this point. You're 3-31. You buy into it. You sell off your old guys right now for the value you can possibly get picks and young players, and you just buy into being awful for the rest of the year. It's already happened. It is what it is. Go full on into it. Play all of your young guys again. Play all of your young guys and lose. You're already losing now, except now you're not getting value for anything, and you're not developing guys. So just sell those guys off, play all your young guys, buy into being terrible, get the top pick again, and reset this offseason. That's one avenue. You need to choose one of these. That's one avenue. The other avenue is, right now, this week, you go out and make multiple moves that makes this team, they're not going to make the play-in. They're not going to make the play. That ship sailed a month ago. It's over. But what you can do is go get multiple guys in the trade market that will have this team playing 500 basketball for the rest of the way. So at the end of the season, you can say, okay, terrible start. We messed up bad with this roster. It was historically awful. But we added some guys to the roster, and we got to see how Cade looks with them, how Duren looks with them, how Ivy looks with them. We got to see how they looked with them. And look, oh my God, they played 500 basketball. We can believe in these guys. We need to put more good players around them. And now you do that in the offseason. And now heading into the offseason, everyone can say, you know what? It was a horrific, historically bad start, but they went out and made moves. And now we can believe in this young core and clearly see that if you add players to them, they can be something. They can continue to grow. And there's a formula here, because right now you don't see a formula. Right now you don't see any hope. You don't see anything. This team loses no matter what. So go do that, and you end the season kind of like you're past how bad. Orlando wasn't this bad last year. They started off, I believe, 5-25. The Pistons are way worse than them. They're horrifically bad. But at that point last year, 5-25, Orlando went on to play 500 basketball the rest of the way, and now look at them. And at the end of last season, everyone in Orlando felt good about them. Like, hey, we started off bad, but we saw that they turned it around, and we should feel good moving forward. It's a little bit later for the Pistons right now, 3-31. It's a little bit longer in the process, but you can still try to do the same thing and get something out of the season with that. Those are the two avenues you can choose. You have to choose one, because just doing nothing, you're accomplishing neither. You're not getting value for guys while also not developing your young guys, while also still losing historically amounts of games. You have to choose one. At this point, I don't care which one. I see value in both at this point. A few weeks ago, I was like, look, you have to get the veterans. You have to get more guys in here to help them win games. You have to go do it. But it's been weeks now, and they haven't done it. So I have now pivoted off of that and said I would be even okay if you just sold off all the veterans, bought into how bad this season is. It's over already. At least now you get assets to try to do more moves in the offseason. Like, you have to do one of the two. You cannot continue to stay here and do nothing. You're not getting anything out of this. doing nothing, you are quite literally getting 0 out of this season. You have to choose one of them. Like, this front office has to look in the mirror. This ownership has to look in the mirror and say to themselves, this is over. This experiment is done. And what we're doing right now is getting nothing out of anything. Like, we have to choose one of these scenarios. I know they probably don't want to do it. They obviously don't want to do it. They don't want to admit to themselves that they've messed up this badly and they've been this bad. Well, it is what it is, man. At some point, you have to admit it. And you have to make moves that acknowledge that. So this week, seriously, dude, this week, they have to choose one of those avenues. They have to choose one. Have to. It's just negligence to not choose either one. To do nothing is just, they have to do one. Let me know in the comments or over on YouTube, which one would you go down? Which avenue do you think the Pistons should go down at this point, January 4th, 3-31? Which avenue should they be going down? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter. Should Pistons fans begin ready for another long losing streak? We'll talk about that when we return. But first, I've got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up. The Lions to the playoffs. Got screwed out of that number 2 seed. It is what it is. I don't know what Brad Allen's on. But the NFL season is wrapping up. And there's time still to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, and there's multiple different ways to bet on it, like live same game parlays. Find bets in the new Explore tab. Make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays, and more. A few years ago, when betting became legal in Michigan, I didn't know which app to go. I didn't know where to try. I was new to everything. And I tried out FanDuel, and I have not turned back since. FanDuel, not only is it extremely fun to use, not only is it super self-explanatory, but again, it's easy to use. That's really the biggest thing, to be honest. It's super easy to use, and there's so many different things to do. Player props, game parlays. Like, there's even, you can go on there and see a same game parlay that everyone else is betting on. And it's a popular one. You can say, hey, I want to get on this one too. There's all kinds of things you can do with FanDuel, and that's why I absolutely love it. I'm still using it all these years later and plan on continuing to use it for years to come. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today and make your first bet an easy layup. That's with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for being Locked On Pistons, your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review. Whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, that's another great way to support the podcast. This is how much I love all you guys. I'm recording this. It's 12:30. I have to go to work in 6 hours. Actually, 5.5 hours now. Pistons went to overtime. Straight up screwed me. But I'm still getting on here. I'm recording. About to get this episode out for you guys. That's how much I love you guys. Love this community. You feel me? I appreciate all y'all. But sorry to break it to you. Should Pistons fans get ready for another long losing streak? I'm here to tell you, probably. Unless the team goes out and makes multiple moves for some bets and multiple moves for some wings to have them playing better basketball, like we mentioned last segment, one of the avenues to go down. Unless they do that, get ready for another long losing streak. There is hope. There is one reason to hope, and that's because they played the Spurs in the 10th. So this losing streak right now is at 2 after being the Raptors and cutting off the 28-game losing streak. That, by the way, tied the longest losing streak of all time. Is at 2. They got the Warriors, Nuggets, Kings up next. So it'll get to 5 for sure. It's getting to 5. The Spurs, they're playing the Spurs at home on the 10th. So they could. That is a game they could win. Simply because you'd assume so, because the Spurs are the other worst team in the NBA. The second worst team in the NBA. Actually, is it them or the is it the Spurs or the Wizards that's the second worst team now? Yeah, it's still the Spurs. They play the Spurs in the 10th. So that's an opportunity to try to shut it off right there, keep it at 5, and then go on another losing streak. And then, that's their hope. But if they don't beat the Spurs, then they got the Rockets. They've already lost to the Wizards. This time they're going to be in Washington, so I don't see that happening. So if they don't beat the Spurs, then they got the Rockets, the Wizards, the Timberwolves, the Bucks on a back-to-back. I mean, the Pistons are going to be playing the Bucks back-to-back. Then the Hornets, Wizards again, Thunder, Cavs, Clippers, Magic, Kings, and then Trailblazers. So is the likelihood of the Pistons going on a long losing streak like they did at the beginning of the season, is it just as high of a probability? I'd say no, because I feel like in that losing streak, actually, no, I can't even say that, because at the beginning they played some soft teams and they lost those ones. But I mean, looking at this one, the Pistons had a streak of playing some decent teams at least for a while during the first losing streak. And I'm not trying to say I think they win any games against the worst teams in the league during that streak. I mean, the Pistons are the worst team in the NBA, worst team of all time. They probably still lose those games. So it's very possible they just go on this losing streak anyways because of how bad they are. But just looking at like the next 10 games, they do play the Wizards twice in that stretch. They do play the Spurs. You'd think that having those 3 games in the next 10 games should stop you from going on a 10-game losing streak. Because you should beat at least one of them. You should win at least one of those, because those two teams are the other 2 worst teams in the league, and you play them combined 3 times. So you should at least win one of those. Okay? Like you think you at least win one of those. So is it possible that the Pistons go on another long losing streak? 100%. I could see us looking back in a month seeing the Pistons on another 16, 18, 20 game losing streak at that point. I could see it happening. I for sure could see it happening. But I also won't be shocked if they happen to get a win against the Wizards, if they get a win against the Spurs and kind of have like, for like the rest of the season, a 6-game losing streak, then a win. Then a 7-game losing streak and a win. And then another 7-game losing streak and a win. Like, I could see that happening. It's also not far off this team's possibility that they go on another 20-game losing streak. So, I don't know. I think it's possible. I wouldn't bet on it because it does. I mean, even during the last losing streak, I told you guys that you usually at least win one game that you're not supposed to win. Like, another team doesn't take you too seriously, and then they win one of those games. And now that the Pistons are on the 28-game losing streak and every team in the NBA doesn't want to be that team that loses to the Pistons, maybe they do get one of those games against one of these better teams that they take the Pistons lightly and they're like, oh, it is what it is now. It's the Pistons. And then the Pistons can steal one. Maybe that opens up the door for that. So that's another reason to believe that they won't go on such a long losing streak again. But they also haven't done any moves. They're not doing any moves. And they're the worst team in the NBA. So it definitely could happen. So let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter what you guys think is going to happen. Do you guys think it's possible they go on another long losing streak? Again, let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. That's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Until next time, peace out.